Welcome to Mix It Up Cooking with me, Michelle. This is my first time making any sort of cooking video and I'm really excited to share it with you. So let's not waste any time and get cooking. Today I'm making hush puppies. For those of you who aren't familiar with them, they're a cornmeal based American dish from the South that's fairly popular to have alongside fish dishes, usually fried, or just by themselves. They were one of my favorite dishes as a kid, but I've never actually made them myself as an adult. This is going to be my first time. Initially, I was going to use a recipe I found in an old cookbook I have from the 60s, but looking at it, something just seemed off. It didn't call for sugar, buttermilk, or even any seasonings. That just seemed wrong to me, so I checked out where this particular cookbook was published. New York City?
New York City?
Yeah, that's why. So I went to the trusty internet and searched for a good Southern-made recipe. It was actually harder than you think. Finally, I came across one that seemed pretty good if I tweaked it a little bit, and that's what we'll be using today. I've copied the recipe below. For this recipe, you'll need cornmeal, flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, 3/4 cup buttermilk, or milk and vinegar to make your own, 1 large egg, 1 onion, jalapeno if you want, and your choice of spices and seasonings. Oil for frying. I'm using vegetable, but canola or peanut oil would work as well. Also, fun little game. See if you can spot where I messed up the recipe before I do. Alright, so if you're like me, you probably don't have buttermilk, but it's super easy to make. Just take 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of son of a biscuit. Okay, right, stupid milk. Okay, finally. Anyway, 1 cup of milk and add 1 tablespoon of vinegar and lemon juice. I found vinegar works much better, but lemon juice will work at a pinch. Mix it together and set it aside to sit for about 15 minutes. While it's doing that, we'll get some cutting done. Now you'll see that I am amazing at cutting onions. I say that with the absolute heaviest level of sarcasm possible. Funny enough, I actually learned to cut them this way from playing Cookie Mama games on my DS years and years ago. Okay, that's done. Now the recipe doesn't call for jalapeno, but I had one left over and I saw in the comments of the recipe I used that people like adding it. It also had a lot of comments about how bland the hush puppies tasted. That's why I have some extra stuff to add to it. Anyway, cut your jalapeno if you're using it. Depending on your spice tolerance, you might want to de-seed it and cut out the white membranes. My husband's from Newfoundland, born and bred, so his spice tolerance isn't terribly high. We're working on it though. For now, I'm only going to use half the pepper. Now to do the dry ingredients. Cornmeal was surprisingly hard for me to find here in Newfoundland. I was used to being able to find it easily in the States, so I was frustrated when I thought it wasn't available here. Luckily, I discovered it on the international aisle, and all is well. I like to use a medium grit meal, but if you want a smoother hush puppy, use a finer grit. So add 1 cup of cornmeal and then add in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. One of the first cooking tips I remember learning as a kid to never get your flour by scooping in the measuring cup. Gotta spoon it in and level off the top. I'm curious what tips you guys remembered learning as kids. Comment below if you can think of any. Next comes the baking powder. Not the stuff in the box, that's baking soda. I always get them mixed up and end up double and triple checking before I add it. Next is just me adding in some extra seasonings. Like I said before, the comments of the recipe noted on how bland they were, so I wanted to try to avoid that. Some cayenne pepper, black pepper, onion powder, and some sugar. Once you have all your dry ingredients in there, mix well. Now we go back to the milk. Yep, looks pretty buttermilky to me. Just be sure to use it right away when you make buttermilk, as it doesn't last long in the fridge before going sour. Whisk up an egg and add it to the milk along with the onions and jalapenos if you chose to use one. Oh, oops. I almost forgot I wanted to add some garlic as well. I know fresh is best, but come on, this stuff is easy and tastes just as good. Mix that up, add to the dry ingredients, and combine. Now, it was about this point that I'm thinking something's wrong, but I didn't know what yet. This is supposed to be dropped into oil to fry, but it's like pancake consistency. I thought maybe it would thicken up, so I went to heat up the oil. Now, the origins of hush puppies is pretty much unknown. I've heard all sorts of stories. The one I was told as a kid was actually told to me whenever we went to our favorite restaurant down south. It was an old restaurant called
Welcome to Fofos.
I don't know if they're still around because I was a kid in the 80s. But in the 80s, we loved that restaurant. It was so good. Anyways, we'd go to Po Folks, and I'd always order up some hush puppies because I loved hush puppies. And I remember asking once, why are they called hush puppies? And I was told that the reason was, in the Old West, cowboys would be sitting around the fire at the end of the day, and the dogs would be yapping. And so they'd take all the leftovers from dinner, mix in some cornmeal, fry them up, throw them to the dogs and say, hush puppies. I don't know. It's kind of silly. Don't know how true it is. Probably isn't true at all. But it's still a nice little, story to tell little kids. Anyway, now the oils had some time to heat up. While it was doing that, I tried to thicken up the batter with some more flour and cornmeal. As you can see, it's better, but it still seems really liquidy. Anyway, the recipe says to heat it to 375 Fahrenheit, but I don't have a thermometer. We had a digital one, but my husband accidentally threw it in the sink while he was washing the dishes, and it was constantly saying everything was 250 degrees, so now we have no thermometer. Another way you can check is to stick the handle of a wooden spoon in. If you've seen tiny bubbles forming around it and rising up, the oil's ready. I'm pretty annoyed at this point because I still didn't realize what I'd done wrong. Did you spot it? We'll go over it in just a sec. Anyway, in goes the batter. Pretty clear the oil's actually still not hot enough, but too late now. Going to add some more flour and cornmeal while it's cooking. They're going to taste awesome. That's more sarcasm, by the way. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of frying things in oil because it still kind of scares me, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. I let it cook for about 3 minutes till it looked golden brown, took it out to drain on some paper towels, and added in some more puppies. Still pretty dang runny, but by now I'm resigned to my fate of having runny batter. The test one's cooled down enough for me to take a look. Not bad, actually. Looks like a hush puppy. Should have cut the onions way smaller, but not too bad. Taste was sadly bland, despite my best attempts, which makes me wonder just how bland it would have tasted without me adding anything. Yeah, that's Toby. Toby's a good boy. Such a good boy. And he loves it when I go in the kitchen. He likes to eat anything. As you can tell, he's a little bit of a sausage. We're working on that. Usually I do try to give him a little bit, but this time, since there's so many onions in here, I didn't give him any. So ironically, my puppy didn't get any hush puppies. He loves frozen vegetables. So he's going to get himself a little bit of frozen squash. So here you go, bud. Such a good boy. Anyway, Toby's going to be with us next time, I promise. So here we are. My finished hush puppies. Not round like they're supposed to be, but that's due to the runny batter. Did you see where I messed up? Yeah, the milk. Recipe called for 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk, but since I only know how the ratio of milk to vinegar by using 1 cup of milk, I made 1 cup of milk and forgot to only add in 3/4 a cup to the batter. Overall, they tasted okay, surprisingly bland even though I tried to avoid that. We also tried making a sauce to dip it in, took some honey and added sriracha to it. Wasn't bad. So thank you for sharing this little cooking adventure with me. Maybe try them out yourself sometime and let me know how they went. Or if you have a family recipe that's tried and true, let us all know. And of course, like and subscribe to see more videos. I had a lot of fun doing this one and hope to continue adding more videos in the near future.